Next on Link TV, Latin Pulse, news and analysis from Latin America as seen by Latin American media, followed by a panel discussion on the issues. Next on Latin Pulse, only on Link TV.
The following program is an original production of Link TV.
Tensions are growing between one of America's strongest Latin American allies and one of its foes.
Señor Ministro de Defensa, muévame 10 batallones hacia la frontera con Colombia. De inmediato.
Will Colombia ever be able to pacify a guerrilla movement with a 60-year history of violence? Or will the U.S. have to continue to pour billions of dollars to prop them up? This and more, coming up next on Latin Pulse.
Muy temprano comenzó la movilización de tropas venezolanas hacia la frontera con Colombia. Además, se hizo por vía aérea.
Latin America came to the brink of war recently as tensions grew between one of the strongest allies the U.S. has in Latin America and its neighbors. Colombia recently intruded into Ecuador's territory in pursuit of Colombian guerrillas, killing the rebels' number 2 man. Venezuela came to the aid of Ecuador, sending troops and tanks to its border with Colombia. Ecuador did likewise. The standstill and the war drums were silenced a week later at a summit of Latin American presidents in the Dominican Republic, where they agreed to defuse the crisis, choosing to pursue diplomatic channels to resolve their differences.
Y estamos dando una muestra que cuando hay buena voluntad, compromiso, consecuencia con principios, no con un país. Cuando queremos hablar claro, sin medias tintas, se puede llegar a fundamentales decisiones y conclusiones. Yo pido un aplauso para todos ustedes, compañeros.
Hello and welcome to Pulso Latino. I'm your host, Ena Cuevas.
Lo que no entendemos es por qué Hugo Chávez y Venezuela están metidos en este asunto. La realidad es que esto es un tema entre el país de Colombia y el país de Ecuador.
Our topic tonight, America's support for a Colombian regime that's dealing with internal strife as well as criticism from the outside. It's a regime some say is being kept alive by Washington in order to promote and protect U.S. interests in the region.
El imperio norteamericano se opone a la paz en Colombia.
For over half a century, Colombia has struggled with internal unrest. Violence in some parts of the country is not only rampant, but has become a way of life. At the root is a guerrilla movement suspected of being financed by drug money. Years ago, they turned to kidnappings to raise additional funds and to put pressure on the government. But support for this guerrilla movement seems to be eroding. People in Colombia are fed up with the violence and the instability, as we hear in this report from Mexico's Canal 11.
FARC, no más secuestros. Esa fue la consigna de la jornada de movilización mundial contra el grupo guerrillero llamado las Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia. En Bogotá, miles de personas marcharon hacia la Plaza Bolívar. Vestidas de blanco, enarbolaron banderas y pancartas en contra de la guerrilla que mantiene en cautiverio a unas 750 personas.
Estamos marchando acá por el acuerdo humanitario, no a la guerra, no al secuestro, libertad para todos los secuestrados.
A la gran marcha se sumaron familiares de secuestrados y Consuelo González, liberada por las FARC en diciembre pasado.
Estoy feliz de que el pueblo colombiano haya entendido que juega un papel muy importante en la situación de búsqueda que vive el país para lograr la libertad, que esta motivación tiene que seguir siendo permanente, que no puede ser coyuntural.
Colombia's once friendly relationship with neighboring Venezuela is now strained. Venezuela claims the American government is promoting violence in the region to advance Washington's own agenda.
El imperio norteamericano se opone a la paz en Colombia y presiona con toda su fuerza al gobierno de Colombia para que el gobierno de Colombia se oponga también a la paz. Y ahí está el problema más grave que hoy hay en torno a este tema.
The strongest guerrilla movement is known by its Spanish acronym FARC, or Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. They may also have found an ally in Venezuela's president, Hugo Chávez. Chavez recently called for the movement to be recognized as a legitimate political armed group and not a terrorist organization, as the Colombian government labels it.
Hay que darle reconocimiento a las Fuerzas Armadas Revolucionarias de Colombia y al Ejército de Liberación Nacional de Colombia. Son fuerzas insurgentes que tienen un proyecto político.
Además, y en contravía de lo que muchos gobiernos consideran, el presidente venezolano le pidió a la comunidad internacional que saque a las FARC de la lista de organizaciones terroristas.
Yo solicito a los gobiernos del continente que retiren a la FARC y al ELN aquellos que así lo hayan colocado a estos cuerpos insurgentes de guerrilla en la lista de grupos terroristas, que se retiren. Pido a Europa que retire a la FARC y al ELN de la lista de grupos terroristas del mundo, porque eso tiene una sola causa, la presión de los Estados Unidos.
Colombia's response to Chavez has turned this issue into a political tennis match. Because of this, diplomatic relations have been broken between the two countries.
Los grupos violentos de Colombia son terroristas porque secuestran, ponen bombas indiscriminadamente, reclutan y asesinan niños, asesinan mujeres embarazadas, asesinan ancianos y utilizan minas antipersonales, dejando a su paso miles de víctimas inocentes.
El gobierno le recordó al presidente Chávez que las 2 personas que fueron liberadas ayer estuvieron cautivas durante 6 años y que aún 750 colombianos siguen privados de su libertad.
Ni tampoco ocultar el tratamiento de tortura que los terroristas de las FARC dan a los miembros de la fuerza pública y a los dirigentes políticos secuestrados por ellos. Permanecen encadenados día y noche y en jaulas, como también lo atestiguan las 2 personas liberadas recientemente.
The American government says the rebels will continue to be called terrorists as long as they continue to behave as such. This is partially in response to the rebels continuing to hold hundreds of hostages, including at least 2 Americans.
El embajador de Estados Unidos en Colombia celebró la liberación de Clara Rojas y Consuelo González, pero lamentó la situación a la que son sometidas las personas que aún están secuestradas por las FARC.
En esos videos, en esas pruebas de vida, fue auténticamente repugnante. En otras palabras, una violación de las normas humanas.
También rechazó la propuesta planteada por el presidente de Venezuela, Hugo Chávez, de quitar el calificativo de terroristas a las FARC.
Se designan como una organización terrorista porque se portan como una organización terrorista. Si cambian su comportamiento, entonces se puede cambiar su designación.
El diplomático dijo que las FARC son las únicas responsables de la vida de los secuestrados y reiteró su apoyo al presidente Álvaro Uribe y a sus propuestas para lograr el acuerdo humanitario.
In the meantime, the rebels are suspected of holding over 750 hostages, and they continue to take new ones. But lately, they've also seen some of their own return home, as we see in this report from Mexico's Once Noticias.
Se calcula que la guerrilla tiene detenidos a 750 civiles. Ayer domingo, una columna de las FARC secuestró a 6 turistas extranjeros en el departamento de Chocó, fronterizo con Panamá, mientras en la localidad de Vichada desertaron 18 guerrilleros de las FARC con un bebé de 7 meses.
Bueno, dentro de ellos hay una guerrillera que tiene un hijo de menos de 1 año de edad y manifiesta que el papá de ese niño es un mando medio de esta estructura armada del que te coloca la cámara, solamente tu voz.
And as Chavez continues to support the rebels by insisting they're not terrorists, the Colombian rebels are accused of crossing into Venezuela and taking farmers as hostages.
Las críticas esta vez fueron hechas en su propio país por la Federación de Ganaderos, que asegura que el año pasado 200 venezolanos fueron secuestrados por el grupo guerrillero.
Las FARC no tienen secuestrados venezolanos. Si los tuvieran hace rato ya que los hubiéramos rescatado, ¿saben?
And after more than 6 years in captivity, 2 women, one of them a Colombian senator, were recently released by the rebels. They were handed over to the Venezuelan government after Hugo Chavez played a key role in the negotiations. One of the hostages had a child in captivity, fathered by her rebel lover. Now back in Colombia, she was finally able to reunite with her 2-year-old son.
Dale un abracito a la mamá. Hola. Ahí está un abracito a la mamá.
Estas imágenes difundidas por el Instituto de Bienestar Familiar de Colombia corresponden al momento exacto en que Clara Rojas, liberado el jueves por las FARC junto a la senadora Consuelo González, se reunió con su hijo Emanuel. La última vez que lo vio fue cuando este tenía apenas 8 meses. Luego le fue arrebatado por los guerrilleros. El niño, ahora de 3 años de edad, fue asistido por psicólogos en preparación para este momento.
Me siento la mujer más feliz del mundo, más orgullosa con mi bebé Manuel. Está divino, tiene una mirada hermosa, divino. Yo no sé cómo explicarles, divino.
Clara Rojas pasó la noche junto a su hijo en un lugar cuya ubicación no fue divulgada.
To talk about the situation in Colombia, we'd like to welcome into our studios Susana Pimiento, co-director at Fellowship of Reconciliation Colombia Project, and Marcela Uribe, an activist. And from Washington, D.C., we are joined by Douglas Farah, consultant and freelance writer. If we didn't know any better, this would seem to be a Venezuelan issue instead of a Colombian issue. Why do you think Hugo Chavez has taken center stage?
The conflict in Colombia is definitely, it has taken international dimensions, and it has taken a publicity with the hostage crisis. But you have to keep in mind that the FARC is just one of the actors in the conflict. It's been running over 40 years, and there is definitely a need to come up with a negotiated solution. And the first step has been, and the priority has been, the hostage situation. But there have been millions of victims in the Colombia conflict.
Mr. Farah, last week, Colombia saw one of the largest demonstrations it has ever seen. What does this mean for support for the FARC guerrilla movement?
Well, I think the FARC, except for a few limited rural areas, is pretty much a spent force as far as popular support goes. They clearly have the money to buy weapons and maintain themselves as a military force, and their involvement in kidnapping and drug trafficking and other issues has allowed them to sustain themselves economically, but their popular support, except I would argue in isolated pockets of rural Colombia where they've been very little state presence, is almost non-existent. And I think that people go through cycles. I've been dealing with Colombia for almost 20 years, and there are cycles when people just get fed up with the comportment of the drug traffickers, the paramilitaries, the FARC, the human rights abuses of the military, and civil society tries to reassert itself in some form, usually for a short time before they sort of run out of steam again. But I think this last demonstration was just revulsion with the FARC and their kidnapping habits and their ability to wreak havoc in the country.
Well, they've been around for 60 years. What do you think tipped the scale? Why do you think this is happening right now?
Well, I think there's a convergence of things where you had Hugo Chavez, one saying that the FARC should be recognized as a military force, not as a terrorist element. I think certain elements of Colombian society were certainly unhappy about that. You had the freedom of 2 of the higher profile hostages, and you had the tape of Ingrid Betancourt and the issue over the child that the FARC was also supposed to turn over and then didn't know where the child was, and it turned out the child had already been turned over to foster care several years before. And I think all of those brought, again, the human dimension to a very large tragedy. As your previous guest said, millions of people have been affected by this, and certainly the paramilitaries have been as guilty of this type of violence as the FARC, but the paramilitaries are much less of a factor now. And I think in this particular instance, you had the human face of the tragedy, and I think the tape of Ingrid Betancourt looking so ill, and her heartbreaking letter to her parents and the missing child all added up to a new wave of disgust.
So you think this is something where the population is finally realizing that the hostage problem is actually a problem of the FARC and not the responsibility of the government?
Well, I don't think the Colombian people ever forget what their problems are. I think that there occasionally come a coyuntura, as they say in Spanish, where you have certain factors that come together that bring people to action. I think when you saw in 1988-89 when the Medellin cartel was carrying out a wave of assassinations and kidnappings, the same type of revulsion where certain groups reach a certain point where society rebels against them. And I don't think most Colombians would argue with the fact that the state bears a large deal of responsibility through its corruption and its ineptitude for many years in creating this crisis. But I think at this point in time, where you have different things happening around the region, that the intransigence of the FARC, I would argue, is largely responsible for the situation the country continues to find itself in.
Ms. Pimiento, why did President Uribe ask for Chavez to help him in the first place?
There has been tons of international pressure, and I think mainly because of the high profile of some of the hostages, and Ingrid Betancourt being one of them, since she has dual citizenship. So you have to take into account that he is a very hard-line, very conservative, right-wing president. So since he was elected on the policy that he will defeat military to FARC, and that's what he has carried out, this policy of total war against the FARC, but it actually isn't against the FARC.
He's been pretty successful with the violence in the country, though.
He has not, because what he has done is he has mounted a huge military operations, but it's civilians there, the ones who are being really targeted. Very seldom you find the army fighting actually the guerrillas. It's mainly civilians. That's why you ended up, and hand in hand with the paramilitaries, which have committed huge atrocities, and there has been these links between the Colombian President Uribe government, people in Congress, the army, and these death squads, the death squads, the paramilitaries. President Uribe wants to continue that militaristic approach to this conflict, that it is a political conflict, and in which, we have, as I say, the army has, in the last 5 years, it has carried out 955 extrajudicial killings. That's, people like you and me, that, the army shoots in cold blood and then pass them as guerrillas killing combat.
And that's a very high number. But Mr. Fera, do you believe that this might be the beginning of the end of the FARC?
No, I think the FARC can exist for many more decades as long as it's able to feed itself off of drug trafficking, which generates millions of dollars in revenue, and kidnapping, and couple that, as one of your guests said, that with the ineptitude of the government and their inability to stop the military from carrying out human rights abuses. I think that's been my experience, that has been cut back a bit, and I don't think that the FARC is blameless in this either. I think the FARC has carried out systematic extrajudicial executions as well, but I think you are in a war there. My argument would be that the FARC, however, is no longer a political entity. I think that they lost their ideological identity, decades ago, or at least a decade ago, and have become essentially a functioning criminal enterprise, and I think that's what makes them particularly dangerous. But their ability to survive in the long term, feeding off of the money they get from kidnapping and drug trafficking, I think ensures that and especially if they have safe haven, as they appear to do increasingly in Venezuela, they're not going anywhere anytime soon.
Well, but outside of Colombia, do you think there is concern that the FARC will have some kind of an influence in other countries, or what kind of an impact could they have outside of that country?
Well, I think one of the phenomena of the FARC, and I've been dealing with insurgent groups in Latin America since the mid-1980s, the FARC doesn't have support outside the country. The FMLN did, the Sandinistas did, the M19 did. Other groups all sort of built an international network. I think there's, even on the Latin American left, there's a high degree of revulsion with the FARC. So I think that makes them a little different. I think there's a great deal of concern on national security issues from the side of the United States and Mexico and Central America, that the FARC through Venezuela is trafficking large amounts of cocaine and therefore feeding themselves and feeding the chain of corruption that goes up the border into the United States. And certainly the United States is not blameless. Without consumption, as we all know, we wouldn't have the problem of production. But I think there is a great deal of concern about their ability to spread corruption and destabilize large sections of the continent.
And I think the key there is the destabilization. Douglas Fera, thank you very much for joining us out of Washington, D.C. We understand you're short on time, and we appreciate all of the information.
Thank you.
Continuing here in the studio, talking to Marcela Uribe, you were there on February the 4th on this massive demonstration. Tell us what it was like to be there.
Bueno, era un poco difícil porque nosotros fuimos apoyados por FOR, la organización donde trabaja Susana, y estábamos tratando de llevar un mensaje un poco contrario al mensaje oficial de la marcha, y estábamos tratando de decir: no estamos de acuerdo con la guerra ni con ningún tipo de actor armado en Colombia, no queremos más ayuda militar, no queremos más guerra. Entonces era un poco difícil con algunos miembros de la marcha, digamos, oficial, pero fue interesante hablar con ellos y como tratar de buscar algún punto en común entre todos.
Uno de los puntos interesantes fue cómo la marcha creció, que fue a través de la internet. Han estado hablando del sitio Facebook, sí, que fue la clave en que tantas personas se presentaran. Sí. Sin embargo, ¿tú no consideras que eso fue tan transparente?
No, la marcha desde el primer momento estuvo apoyada como por los grandes medios de comunicación, por el gobierno, se le dio un cubrimiento que ninguna marcha, digamos, de oposición ha tenido, y pues sí, era una marcha básicamente muy manipulada, una convocatoria muy manipulada también, y que no incluía como todas las voces tampoco que están en el país.
¿Pero en qué te basas para hacer esa acusación de que fue una marcha manipulada?
Bueno, primero que todo, pues la promocionaron en El Tiempo, que es el único periódico nacional, en los noticieros, fue apoyada por el gobierno. ¿Qué más podría...?
Les dieron el día libre a los empleados públicos, no hubo escuelas, no hubo colegios, y el mensaje también era un mensaje de no a las FARC, pero también de apoyo al gobierno de Uribe y a la solución militar del conflicto en Colombia. Y a raíz de lo que se ha visto que desde en esta semana, es que ha crecido mucho la idea, ha cogido mucha fuerza la idea de la tercera reelección del tercer periodo de Uribe. Tendrían que hacer una reforma constitucional. La Constitución en este momento no permite que que Uribe pueda lanzarse en un tercer periodo, pero ahora ya se está hablando mucho por el apoyo que tiene a raíz de la marcha.
Sí. Básicamente se manipula, digamos, el cansancio de la gente que tiene frente al conflicto. Todo el mundo en Colombia está agotado, nadie quiere más la guerra, entonces se manipula.
Sin saber qué hacer.
Sí, sin saber qué hacer. Entonces se manipula un poco ese cansancio diciendo que el problema es las FARC, cuando en realidad ese no es el único problema. Y entonces la gente dice, sí, no queremos más FARC, no queremos más guerra, pero no están viendo la realidad completa del conflicto.
And also, this is an internal Colombian problem. How does it affect outside of its borders?
It's definitely the U.S. has played a key role in the conflict. The U.S. has poured over $5 billion in military aid in the last since 2000. That makes Colombia the largest recipient of military aid outside the Middle East. Before the war in Afghanistan and Iraq started, Colombia was the second largest recipient of military aid. The war, that money is really fueling the war. The money goes to the army that has the worst human rights record in the Western Hemisphere. And they are responsible, they along with the paramilitaries are responsible for 70% of the killings and the human rights violations in the country. This is not to say that that the FARC that don't have responsibility, and the ELN, my organization, the Fellowship of Reconciliation, we place human rights observers in an area with the peace community that in northern Colombia that has declared peace community, that has taken a stance, that doesn't want to be drawn by any of the armed actors, and they have suffered. They are only 1,200 members when they started in 10 years ago. 165 people have been killed over the past 10 years. That's 12% of the people. 20% have been killed by the FARC. And
but as a viewer, I listen to all these numbers, and I could say, well, that's really far away. It's a war that doesn't affect me. Or does it?
It does affect you. It's in the last, when Plan Colombia started, it was done as, you know, after the Cold War, the U.S. changed, it had to find a new enemy, and it was then the drug war. So Plan Colombia starts as a program of military aid to tackle the drug problem in Colombia. there has been a study by the Rand Corporation that says that $1 is spent in prevention and treatment here in the U.S. is 23 times more cost effective than if it's spent in crop eradication. And then you have here in the U.S., you have millions of people that are suffering from drug addiction, and yet they have sometimes they have to wait months to receive treatment. So society here definitely feels the impact of the drug problem. And my organization has been leading an effort to redirect those resources from Plan Colombia into drug prevention and treatment at home in the U.S.
Marcela, since military aid has not helped and the steps that the U.S. is taking have not helped, do you think there might be a change, or is there hope that with a new administration, U.S. policy towards Colombia will change?
Sí, es un asunto muy importante para Colombia. Como el cambio de presidente en Estados Unidos, porque definitivamente la línea del nuevo presidente va a influir en las políticas que tengan hacia Colombia, en el tipo de ayuda que se entregue, en el tipo de, digamos, evaluación que se haga de lo que ha pasado con el Plan Colombia, y pues definitivamente no creo que la ayuda militar sea la solución, así que sí va a ser muy importante lo que haga el nuevo presidente para nosotros.
También hay que tener en cuenta que en este momento está a punto de presentarse en el Congreso el Tratado de Libre Comercio entre Colombia y Estados Unidos. Uno tiene que mirar que la ayuda militar y esta propuesta de libre comercio están también, son dos componentes de la política de Estados Unidos hacia Colombia. La gente, estos 3,5 millones de personas que han sido desplazadas por la violencia, sus tierras han sido tomadas en gran parte por los paramilitares que están muy aliados con el gobierno, y para proyectos productivos que se verán beneficiados con el Tratado de Libre Comercio para establecer plantaciones.
Y básicamente son grupos que están todos muy interconectados creando esta situación.
Exactamente.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias a ambas por acompañarnos aquí en el estudio. I trust you enjoyed today's program. I'd like to thank our guests here in San Francisco, Susana Pimiento from the Fellowship of Reconciliation Colombia Project, and Marcela Uribe, an activist. And in Washington, D.C., Douglas Farah, consultant and freelance writer. I also want to thank you at home and on the web for being with us today. We would also like to thank American University in Washington, D.C., and the students at the School of Communication for helping with the research for this program. Join us next time when we take a closer look at Latin America through the eyes of Latin American media. For more information about Pulso Latino and Latin America, log on to linktv.org. I'm Ana Cuevas. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time here on Latin Pulse.
Latin Pulse was made possible by support from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Pulso Latino es posible gracias al apoyo de John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation y el William and Flora Hewlett Foundation.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs that connect you to the world.